Now, this bothers some people, and I understand that. So I grew up with this when I was a child. I would bleed from the nose sometimes for hours while I'm asleep and wake up in pools of blood. At the time, we lived in South America, La Paz, Bolivia. Why? My dad worked for the USA. White guy living on the sidewall of the palace of the president of Bolivia. What on earth would you do that for? Well, if you were assigned as a U.S. private, working to maybe help keep the president in line, and the other two buildings, houses, mansions that were on the wall to the front were lived in by white, rich Americans. And across the street from us, at 14,000 feet, would you believe there were actually poor kids that I played with that didn't have shoes, that didn't have roofs over their heads? My dad wouldn't let me drink the water, even though I said it was clean when they poured it, but you see, it was brown when it's in the bottle. They drank out of the river at the end of the street. Now, I would have, this is real blood, I'm not joking. And I would have times when my nose would bleed for hours. And I wrote about that in this little piece I'm doing. I've written about it before in the story of Darby in the book of Wibblery and Wub, because people wouldn't believe this shit was real. So it's a fantasy, of course. Yeah, it's all a fantasy. But if you go and look on my Substack, now I have to be paid. But they just reamed out my nose today, all the way up in here. My sinuses were so eaten up with this infection that the bacteria, they gave me the antibiotics. I don't normally take it. I'm very much against antibiotics. Normally, you'll see me say that. But they went in here and had to ream out. And it turned out that my face was broken when I was younger. I wore glasses all my life. I was blind by the time I was 10 years old, legally blind, over 2,800 without my glasses. And so I got hit in the face with balls. I got hit in the face with bats. I got hit in the face with fists because I was also crippled. And when you're crippled and you're unable to fight back, people pick on you. I'm 70 years old. I've never been less crippled in my life. Now, I look like I'm bleeding, but guess what? That was my point. I was sitting there typing along, whipping along, 150 words a minute. Yeah, 150 words a minute, 12 million words in the last 4.5 years. If you'd have told me when I was 15 years old trying to commit suicide that the book of Wibblery and Wub and the song that's in it, if you listen to the words, these words were written not just a year or two ago. They were written decades ago. They put the music back in, I think 2011, 2012. But the cartoons, the ones about Darby having nightmares about the earthquakes and the wars and all the bombs. And would you believe there's even pictures of Elon's ship taking off? Literally, the spaceship's taking off. Drawn in 1977 is one of the many cartoons in the book of Wibblery and Wub. Now, I realize it's kind of gross to people, blood, but blood runneth through us. And if you don't understand, blood is water, and it's the water of life. And it's not the same water that comes out of your faucet, H2O. It is H3O2, which means hydrogen, 3 molecules, and 2 molecules of oxygen, not H2, 2 molecules of hydrogen, and O, 1 molecule of oxygen. It's special. And it carries memory. It carries life. We cannot exist without that kind of water, blood. So when you start losing a bunch of it, And that's tell the story of my mother actually praying to God to save me because I was about to die on her lap in La Paz, Bolivia, where we lived as a child. My dad helping take care of controlling the president, as they did in those days, 1959 and 60 in La Paz, Bolivia. And so when she was at the hospital on a Sunday when the hospital was closed and I was on her lap bleeding to death, she actually, unlike her normal self, decided to pray to God on the cathedral that was across the empty square because everybody's at the churches and doing things, and they were just like it was all empty. And she looked up there, the only one not in church on a Sunday, and said, "Dear God, save my son." That was me. At 5 years old, I had a broken back. I was in pain. I had nosebleeds, infected spleen at one point. I was a sickly child. I also had, we didn't know it at the time, Marfan syndrome. And what is Marfan syndrome? Well, you see me go without a shirt a lot of times, but what it is I actually have defects in my chest and in the side and in my back. And that's why I broke, apparently, my back in a small car accident where my mother left me in the car idling, and I actually got up on the Studebaker and pulled the shifter standing up, holding the steering wheel. Yep, at the top of a hill. Yep. Oh, yeah, and the emergency brake wasn't on. Yep. And my mom was standing over there with my brother on her hip and my sister in her belly. And I went down the hill with the car. Except I was standing on the seat and had no clue what a brake was. And so the brake became the trailer at the bottom of the hill. And Studebaker's built pretty tough. He didn't dent a Studebaker easy. Now that trailer, the mobile home, that was another story. That got trashed. But the Studebaker front end, if you ever saw a Studebaker, I should put a picture of that up. Guess what? It got no big damage, except I hit the steering wheel apparently and broke my back. And I was crying, but you couldn't see that anywhere on me. And my mom forgot to mention to my dad that she left me in the car, and I drove down the hill and did all that shit. And so we went from that place on to California, where my dad got trained, and then went down to South America. And nobody ever x-rayed my back or looked at it. In South America, there were no hospitals, and officially we weren't Army, and there was no Army hospitals. And my dad was not very fond of me crying all the time for no reason, and so I was taught to stop crying early in life for no reason, especially. And no reason means what? I can't see the problem. I don't see your pain. You stop crying. Later on, a number of years later, we got to Germany and they did x-rays and discovered that I had broken my back and that I had scoliosis, and I'd be paralyzed if I hit my back in the neck, twisted again, or the middle of the back where the scoliosis. Scoliosis is a severe S curvature of your back. Mine had a big S all the way down to my hips, so I could be paralyzed in the waist, hips, or chest down for the rest of my life if I got into a fight or roughhouse too much. And so my dad switched from having me pick the belt, drop my drawers, and take my whipping for crying for no reason, to learning how to be a pacifist and not cry when you're bleeding or in pain or anything like that. And so I learned early in life that pain is a perspective. Survival is a perspective. And what your parents do does not determine your fate. Necessarily, you picked your parents. Your fate was determined before you got here. Yeah. That's a surprise, because you picked your life. Yeah. You made a contract. Yeah. With God. It may not look like God. What's God look like? It may have been one of God's emissaries, one of his angels, one of his avatars. Who knows? But I'll tell you this. Rubbles, that little worm with wireframe glasses and a blue racing cap. Well, he and Darby got to know each other really good in another plane of existence. And while the prelude only shows that Darby came back, what happened when he went to tell everybody, he needed reassurance. Oh, yeah. He tried to leave again. He needed to get more information. And hanging himself hadn't worked. And the shotgun he'd set up would have been too messy. So yeah, he went back to Freon. Dichlorodifluoromethane gas used to be sold in little cans to go ahead and chill glasses and also for air conditioning. And it was stable up to 135 degrees. But if you breathed it in, it was big molecules, and it literally did suffocate you if you did not take in oxygen for a long enough period. And at that day and age, it was possible to effectively kill yourself. But in suffocating yourself, you can come back. It's very dangerous, deadly, and nobody ever should do it. In fact, on that one, in those days, kids didn't come back because they put that liquid and tried to take it out of the can, and the drop of it got on their lung, on their throat, and froze it. One drop, Freon boils at, I think it's 47 degrees or 70 degrees. And so if it just touches you, it draws all the heat out of your body. Causes you to get really bad frostbite on your fingertips as the liquid goes by your fingers to get into those balloons. And at one point, Darby couldn't use two of his fingers. They were too frostbit down to the meat. And that finger got frostbit down to the meat. And then on his other hand. And Darby eventually had another teacher show up. Yeah. And some of them looked very strange. Gumby of all people. Entities. Cartoons of the day showing up to tell him, hey, here's your new lesson. Are you kidding me? Gumby? Or Gumby the sheriff. Talk about terrifying. Gumby the sheriff shows up and teaches you about vandalism or something. And vandalism meant you're sitting there in your room and Gumby's talking to you and says, what do you think about vandalism? And all of a sudden people come in and start trashing your room, pulling the posters off the wall, tearing your little things you have, very few they are, your black light, and busting it. And you're thinking, oh my God, what is that? That's what vandalism does to the person that's being vandalized. And it's like, I'm screaming, can't do anything. I'm not there. I'm just watching it all. I can't stop it. And then suddenly it's gone. And I never vandalized anything after that in my life. The second vision, when I went back again, of course, to friends, I was so crazy, what the hell? And next thing I'm out in the basement, and Gumby the sheriff is taking me through this door up on this concrete set of steps. We open the gray door and we go in, and I'm following around. I got nobody. I'm just following him because who am I going to follow? There's nothing around except the scene in front of him. All of a sudden materializing, and we're suddenly all of a sudden we're in a warehouse. And I'm looking all around, and I'm looking at these guys, and they're way down at the bottom of the warehouse, and they're strapping on these straps around the pipes, and there's something on. They can't tell what it is, and it's blinking red. It's blinking red, and they run off, and so I run over there, and this is 1960, 70, maybe 1970. Mind you, LED lights had not been invented until I was 18 years old in the U.S. Army, and we were using them in computers. 3 years later in the Army, that you could then run up to a bomb and see the little red bars this way and this way, forming all the numbers, and you go, the ones and the twos and the threes, all made out of bars. And believe it or not, I learned how to, all these things in electronics later on, but I saw this, Darby saw that, and one of the adventures was Gumby the sheriff. And when he realized the bomb was there, he ran out of there, and Darby ran out of there, out the door in the basement where he lived, and up the stairs, hands and feet running, trying to get away from the bomb. Because he thought he was in the warehouse, running up the stairs. And he got to the top of the stairs, he threw the door open, and all of a sudden, his mother was standing in front of him. And it was like, oh, oh, and she says, is everything okay? It's like, yeah. And closed the door, and Darby went back down the basement. But it was as real as you and I are. And I'm not animated. I'm not AI. Would AI do this? No. But if you were to get to see this, if you're one of those rare few that get to see anything that I've produced in a long time, why? The story I told you, the loss of my son in Paris, France. Other stories I can't tell. That's why you won't see or hear much of this. But if you do, please share. Wibblery. Hard to say intentionally. Wibblery. Wibbly. And wub. Easy to say. W-U-B. Like prana. Like chi. Energy of soul. Wub. Energy of soul that forms wub in body is a wib. A wib. The two key words. Wub, energy, pouring through a wib and expressing itself, communicating. If you wibble mind, thought to mind, such as Darby does with Rubbles, or if you touch, that's to wubble, express your energy of soul through touch. Or if you wibbleize, you manifest things in this reality, such as my assignment was to do, to create the cartoons and the words and the books. When I grew up one day, and like he said, what I got at the end, who knew I'd make it to 70? Who knew I could still be? I'm a little skinny right now, I admit. I had an infection I didn't even know inside of my face that almost collapsed my eyeball into my sinuses. Paper thin bone left in a broken socket long ago. When Darby wanted to find out why. Why, God, did you send me to do this job? You know what? I was under anesthesia for an hour. It was like being dead. Your spirit able to roam. And the things that I had seen that came to be. And me, am I. The eye you see, the two eyes you see, but also the eye, the spirit in me. What makes us powerful? Our eyes actually generate photons. And I was so blind you could hardly see my eyes. They were made tiny behind the glasses until I got so blind I couldn't drive anymore. 63 years old. I'm 70 now. Guess what? I'm ready to come out of my cocoon. And I just fixed a very bad problem. And it started because I had a tooth infection, and it got into my socket. And I thought it was a sinus infection, no big deal. And it was going to be able to eat into my brain, because if you let it go, it collapses the bone and actually works as pain in your sinuses. I have another spot in the back of the brain. Who knew? So, it's true. If you have a tooth infection, get your teeth fixed. Lesson of the day. It's the vessel. Honor thy vessel. Honor thy vessel. Please. At 72 years old, I have a friend who's in better condition than me even, and I have known others at 118. I watched a master do a sword dance that convinced me what is youthing. Youthing is the way you believe. Is what am I going to look like when I get old? What is old? I watched that man do things at 118 years old that I can't do at 70. Damn sure couldn't do at 30. And everything I can do at 70, I could not do at 30. I was a broken scoliosis, in pain. Sometimes I didn't even walk without a cane. Guess what? Ain't the same. Please follow up. Visit me. Want to find out more about youthing? Want to find out what's it take to be able to be ripped or to be able to be strong? No, I'm not as big as I used to be, because I'm about to finish the final battles. Want to know more? Want to see me bleed? Oh, man, I just put out a video. Oh. You should check it out. It is bloody. I don't have the bloody shirt on right now, but let me tell you something. What is blood? Well, let's just say I bled today. I bled in a way that most people can't imagine, and this is just part of it. In my life, you ever been shot in the back? You ever been stabbed in the back? So I decided today to display what the courts have done to me in a way that everybody can understand. Have you ever been beat up? Have you ever had people just pick on you, come to your door, and beat you, just so they could be bragging about how they managed to go kick your ass? Has that ever happened to you? It did to me. My dad was in Vietnam. I lived on a street, of all things, would you believe? Moody Street? Moody, Moody, at the dead end street, in the last house on a dead end. And I actually had a boy one time come and knock on my door, and I went on the front, and he decided he'd kick my ass because everybody else was kicking my ass, and I wasn't fighting back. So instead of kicking my ass, that poor boy, well, woo, there you go. You know what happened to him? I pinned him down. Didn't have to hit him. I pinned him down. And when I pinned him down, well, my nose was bleeding because it always bled. Even when I got back from La Paz, Bolivia, I was 15 years old. My nose would bleed if I just went like this. And next thing you know, I'd be bleeding. You can see. It's not that hard to do. So, after bleeding on his face, pinning him down, and dripping on his eyes, and didn't hit him. I'm a pacifist. Why would I hit anybody? Little though, in this day and age, when I grew up, when I got old enough to do free love, to wobble with anybody, wobbling I thought was to touch and to have sex. No, wobbling is to be able to hold somebody, to hug them, to be able to communicate through touch. Love, not sex. But once upon a time, I was a boy toy when I was young. Oh yeah, you might see the pictures of me sometime. I decided not to be a model because you had to be willing to do favors or have things done to you that I would not consider. And therefore I chose different paths in my life than I might have taken otherwise. And from what I've heard afterwards, I'm glad I did. They've drugged people, they've abused people, they take pictures of them in abusive situations when they're totally out cold, and then they take their careers. They own them. Hollywood. Anybody? Modeling? Anybody? I'm here to tell you that shit was real. People got kidnapped, people got killed, all that kind of stuff. It's real. I'm 23 minutes into this. This is beyond what most people can handle. Oh my God, attention spans are a gnat, plus a bat, and maybe a couple of little rabbits thrown together. But for those who pay attention, it's going to be a fun ride this week, this month, and the next month, because we are about to enter a new phase. Yeah. We, W-I-I. That's all of us eyes together. Me. These two eyes. This eye. This eye. Instincts, that belly at the bottom. If you want to know how to get in shape, by the way, I do have some videos out when I was learning at 55 how to not be crippled. Now I do the splits. Look at my videos. Now I do fingertip Chinese plank push-ups. Look at my videos. I'm 70 years old, and if you said I was going to do this when I was 45 or 50, I said, yeah, give me some of your good drugs, because there ain't nothing in the world going to make that happen. And then my son died. And I watched that amazing man at 118 doing his routine at the Qigong Convention in 2012, International Convention, and I learned I thought I knew things. I thought I was a genius, and all of a sudden I was stupid. That man was 2 times my age plus 10 years doing things I couldn't do. And I changed my belief system. I killed off the old me. It's called, Dabrowski calls it positive disintegration. Jung called it individualization. There's all sorts of terms, but I tell you this, it's true. Got to kill off the last guy to build yourself anew. So, I've been through many of these die-offs. When my son passed away, I had to kill off the person it took to make the millions of dollars, to build the empire, to make tiny Texas houses, the legacy I was going to give my son, the land. And after he died, the bank decided to take it instead. And I've been battling these guys for 10 years. I hope you join me, because this is part of a wonderful story. They finally stepped into all the traps, and I gave them fair warning all along the way. Do you believe in reincarnation, my friends? Look up the Kittel, Kittel name. Yeah. Who knew? You pick your parents. You pick your genes. You pick the place you're going to go, and it's got to be right near where you left. It's got to be in pretty close time proximity, because you step back in to continue the battle, because it happens in cycles. And we're in one of those cycles. Except this time, guys, I want to tell you something. The Light Brigade, the Indigo, we're here. Don't be waiting. Be ready. Get active. You can't support me. I'm not monetized. I've never been monetized on any platform. In 20 years, I had the first cyber cafe, the biggest in the United States, in 1996. I was in cyber and computers in 1973. I was in because I saw a lot of things a long time ago. I didn't believe they could happen. Guess what, folks? I saw more, but now I realize it was real. It's just how long it took to make it happen. I'm broadcasting from Salvage, Texas, a place I manifested based on a fantasy book I started when I was in college. Before I sold the pet crabs, spread the crabs across the country. If you look back in the days of the pet rock, the next year was the pet crabs. Yours truly. Top salesman of only 2 of us. And I sold the crabs from New York City, the Toy Tower. I actually had the crabs in the very top restaurant on the tallest building for all of those big markets from all the toys around the world. And I was up in the top restaurant, and my 5 crabs got out of my pocket. Pet hermit crabs. And they crawled up the curtains. It was an absolute fun thing. And then, of course, I sold thousands, tens of thousands of pet hermit crabs, never understanding they were alive. But we gave them houses, aquariums, and pet crab food, and crab t-shirts that said, "Give someone you love the crabs." And those guys made millions off of it, and I was too young to understand. Millions of crabs perished, becoming toys for money. Boxes that said, "Give someone you love the crabs," t-shirts. American Crab. Look it up. The Great American Crab Company. What was that? 79, maybe? 77? Look it up. I was the guy that sold all that. The guys that made the box, photographer and a printer, couldn't sell shit. Dog food to dogs. They were just a couple of geeks, came up with an idea. And a friend of mine, I thought was a friend, an older guy, and I marketed it. And when he broke his back, I dropped out of college, came back and marketed it. And in the end, they ripped me off at the end of the year, of course. But I learned a lesson. I had 800 crabs in my living room. I watched them die. I put them on the back porch. I watched the birds come kill them. What do you do with 800 pet crabs? And a bunch of crab t-shirts. and a bunch of books that you can give somebody that says what to do with the crabs once you've got them. I'll tell you from experience, don't give that to girls in the elevator. When they get a little booklet and it's got a little pet hermit crab on the front, it says what to do with the crabs once you've got them. In my day, that's how come I sold so many, is because didn't want to get the crabs. And in those days, back when I was a boy toy and a salesman selling crabs at the Navy Pier in Chicago, that actually worked once or twice. That little come on with the book. But that's another story. You got to read the book of Wibblery and Wub, because there's a lot of those stories in it too. Oh wait, I haven't written that chapter yet. That was the pyramid salesman and his girlfriend, or acquaintance, in Chicago. So, back in the days of the pyramids being really big, that's when I was selling pet crabs out there to people to put in, have as pets. So, what a wonderful world. Look where I am now. I'd never do that to a crab again. It's amazing how we change. 45 years later. Whew. See y'all, guys. Thanks. This is long. It'll probably take a day to get online, but if you get to see it, it's a rare event. Please share. Watch my bloody story as we go ahead and do battle, because I'm going to battle with the constables, with the system that allows them to come and take your property on the courthouse steps, and nobody knows the rules. And if you protest, if you try to defend yourself, you can be charged with what? Until you find out, you don't know. And if the constable doesn't know and says you can do it and then says you can't do it and you get in trouble anyway, then clearly there's a flaw. There's a fly in the soup. Come, explore it with me. It's going on now. Bye.